It all begins with a question that made military experts around the world sit up and take notice. What if the sleeping giant everyone talked about for decades was never really asleep at all? For years, the world saw India as a country that bought weapons from other nations, a country that depended on foreign factories to protect its own soldiers, its own borders, and its own future. Western analysts wrote reports calling India a promising market, never once calling it a serious power. Rival nations built their entire strategies around the old idea that India would always stay a few steps behind. But in 2026, something changed, and it changed so fast that even India's rivals struggled to keep up. This is the story of how India's military stopped asking for permission and started writing its own rules. It is a story of scientists working through the night, soldiers trusting homemade equipment, and a nation refusing to stay small. It is a story that most people outside India completely missed because they were still looking at the India of 10 years ago. Stay till the end, because the final chapter of this story is the one that shocked the world the most. Let us start from the 10th point and count our way down to the moment that changed everything. Number 10 takes us back to a battle that became the turning point for India's entire defense system. It is known as Operation Sindoor, and it was not just a military operation, it was a message sent to the world. For the first time, India used weapons built entirely inside its own country in a real combat situation. Anti-drone systems, homegrown missiles, and indigenous radar networks worked together like a well-rehearsed orchestra under pressure. Nobody outside the operations room knew how the technology would perform when real threats came screaming through the sky. The world expected India to lean on foreign technology, but instead, India leaned on itself, and it held strong. Military officials later said this operation proved that India's defense industry was no longer just a dream on paper. It was real, it was tested under fire, and it worked exactly when the nation needed it the most. Soldiers who once trained with imported systems suddenly trusted machines built by their own countrymen without hesitation. Foreign observers who studied the operation quietly admitted that India's homegrown systems performed better than many imported alternatives. Defense journals from other countries began writing detailed reports trying to understand exactly how India managed such a leap. Some called it luck. Others called it years of quiet preparation finally meeting the right moment in history. But that was only the beginning of a much bigger transformation waiting to unfold across every branch of the military. The 9th point on our list is a title that most countries spend generations trying to earn and never manage to reach. By the end of 2025, India had quietly become the third largest military power on the entire planet. Only the United States and China stood ahead of a country of over 1.4 billion people. Think about that for a moment. A country once known for asking others for help was now standing among giants. This was not an accident. It was the result of years of investment, planning, and quiet national determination. Behind every ranking number were thousands of engineers, factory workers, and researchers whose names the world will never know. Analysts across the world began asking a new question: how did nobody see this coming sooner than they did? Neighboring countries recalculated their own defense budgets almost overnight, worried about being left far behind. Global think tanks that once ignored India's military reports suddenly began requesting detailed briefings from Indian officials. Newspapers in rival nations ran cautious headlines, trying to downplay a shift that everyone privately knew was real. The real story goes deeper than just numbers on a ranking chart, and it starts with technology itself.
Number 8 brings us to the laboratories where India's scientists worked in silence to change the future of warfare. The Defense Research and Development Organization revealed 7 major indigenous technologies that stunned global observers watching from a distance. These were not small upgrades. They touched propulsion systems, advanced materials, radar technology, and modern battlefield tools. Each project reduced India's dependence on foreign countries for critical military equipment that once had to be imported at any cost. What made this even more powerful was how the technologies connected to each other, like puzzle pieces fitting perfectly together. Skills built for one fighter jet program were reused to design engines for future stealth aircraft years later. Knowledge from missile defense projects became the foundation for brand new air defense systems protecting Indian skies. India was not just building weapons anymore, it was building a complete self-reliant ecosystem that could sustain itself for decades. Universities across the country began redesigning engineering courses just to keep up with the pace of new defense research. Young students who once dreamed of working abroad now dreamed of joining India's own growing defense laboratories instead. But no one expected what came next in the skies above the nation, far above where ordinary eyes could see. Number 7 takes us into the clouds, where India's dream of a stealth fighter jet began taking real shape. The Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, known as AMCA, is India's answer to the world's most advanced air forces. This fifth-generation stealth fighter is being built using lessons learned from the earlier Tejas program, refined over many hard years. For decades, powerful nations guarded stealth technology like a closely kept secret, sharing it with almost no one. India refused to wait for permission and instead built its own path toward the same difficult goal. Every test, every design change, and every small success brought India closer to owning true air dominance. This changed everything about how the world viewed India's ambitions in modern aerial warfare and future combat readiness. Air power has always decided the outcome of major conflicts, and India finally understood this lesson deeply. Pilots who once trained on borrowed designs now looked forward to flying machines built entirely by their own nation. Number 6 is the story of a shield that most people never even knew existed until it truly mattered. Project Kusha is India's own long-range air defense system built entirely by domestic engineers and scientists. This system was designed to detect threats early and stop them before they could ever cause real harm. Technology developed years earlier for ballistic missile defense became the backbone of this powerful new protective shield. In a world where air threats grow more advanced every single year, having your own defense system is priceless. India no longer had to depend on another country's timeline or another country's shifting political mood. It could protect its own skies on its own terms, using its own technology and its own decisions. Families living near sensitive border regions finally felt a new sense of safety they had never truly felt before. Children growing up in those regions would now grow up under a shield built by their own nation's hands. This is where the real emotional weight of this story begins to sink in for many ordinary Indians watching from home. Number 5 moves us into deep blue waters, where the Indian Navy quietly rewrote its own history. New ships joined the fleet, including a modern stealth frigate for speed, silence, and precision strikes. A large hydrographic survey vessel and a shallow-water anti-submarine craft also entered active service without much fanfare. The Coast Guard welcomed advanced air cushion vehicles designed for fast coastal protection and emergency response missions.
Indigenous aircraft carriers and submarines highlighted just how far India's naval engineering had truly advanced over the years. This was not simply about adding more ships to a fleet. It was about controlling India's own ocean destiny completely. For a country surrounded by strategic waters on 3 sides, this naval growth carried massive long-term importance. Trade routes that once depended on the goodwill of foreign navies were now firmly protected by India's own growing fleet. Fishermen and merchant ships alike sailed with a quiet confidence that their nation now truly guarded these waters. But the numbers behind this transformation were about to tell an even bigger, more surprising story. Number 4 brings us to a figure that made economists and defense analysts stop and recalculate everything they believed. India reported record-breaking defense production worth nearly 1.78 lakh crore rupees in a single year. This was not government promises or future targets. This was real output from real factories across the entire nation. Every rupee represented jobs created, engineers trained, and a nation slowly becoming self-sufficient in defense manufacturing. Small businesses and startups played a massive role in this growth, something rarely seen in traditional defense industries anywhere else. Officials began calling these small companies the modern builders of India's military strength, and they meant every word. This surge in production changed India from a nation that consumed weapons into a nation that proudly created them. Factory towns that once struggled for steady work suddenly became busy centers of national pride and daily employment. Workers who assembled these systems by hand often spoke about feeling connected to something far bigger than themselves. And that shift set the stage for something the world truly did not expect to happen so quickly. Number 3 is the moment India stopped being just a buyer and became a serious global seller instead. At the World Defense Show in Riyadh, India proudly displayed its indigenous weapons to the entire watching world. Countries that once only sold weapons to India were now watching India sell weapons to others in return. Defense exports climbed rapidly, with the government setting bold new targets for the years still ahead. This was more than trade. It was proof that international buyers trusted the quality of Indian technology completely. Smaller nations across Asia, Africa, and Latin America began signing deals for equipment they once could never afford from bigger powers. A country once dependent on imports was now shaping conversations in the global defense marketplace itself. Military experts across continents admitted they had underestimated how quickly this transformation could actually happen right in front of them. Delegations from smaller nations began arriving in India, hoping to learn how such rapid growth was even possible. What was once seen as a distant dream had quietly become an everyday reality inside Indian defense corridors. But the real story goes even further, into the skies filled with silent, watching flying machines. Number 2 takes us into the fast-growing world of drones, one of the most important battlefields of our time. India rapidly expanded its use of domestically developed drone platforms for both military and civilian purposes across the country. These drones served in surveillance missions, border monitoring, and rapid response situations across difficult and dangerous terrains. At the same time, India strengthened its anti-drone systems to counter threats from hostile aircraft and enemy technology. This dual strength meant India could both strike with precision and defend against modern aerial dangers without hesitation. In modern warfare, drones often decide outcomes faster than traditional weapons ever could in the past. India understood this shift early, and its rapid drone growth placed it firmly among the leading nations in this field. Farmers in border villages often described watching these silent machines pass overhead, quietly guarding land their families had lived on for generations.